Good morning, Stephen Sheal. How are you?
I'm very well, Eric. How are you?
Good. Notwithstanding the current dramas that all of us are experiencing in daily life, getting on and getting to speak to good people like you. How are things with you and your family at the moment?
Things are good. Yeah, we're a small family of four. So I have two teenage girls, both of whom are busy studying at the moment. Well, remote teaching, I think.
Remote schooling, absolutely. So the reason for asking you to come on the call, you work with the famous Oil and Gas Technology Centre, and your role is External Relationships Director. I wonder if you could just run us through what the Oil and Gas Technology Centre, or OGTC, has been up to for the last, I guess, 3 years now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for those who are not familiar with the OGTC, we are just over 3 years old. We're funded by government, both the UK government and Scottish government collaborated to fund us through something called the Aberdeen City Region Deal. And if that's not been on your radar, let me give you a little bit of background to that. So City Region Deals are useful mechanisms that government have been using up and down the country, both Scotland and the rest of the UK, to help inject capital into city regions and invest in infrastructure projects. And each city region has to put forward a plan and a proposal. And as part of Aberdeen City Region's plan and proposal, one of the asks was for the Oil and Gas Technology Centre to get set up. And the whole reason for that was that we wanted to have an entity that would ensure that we could invest in new technologies that would continue to develop the great potential that still exists in the North Sea. We wanted to maximise the economic opportunity there, make sure that we maintain the level of industry and employment and technology innovation that we've enjoyed for the last 40 years, maintain it here.
Yep.
We wanted to anchor the supply chain here as well and make sure the supply chain is doing all the right things, making the new generation of technologies to be competitive both here in the UK and also internationally. We wanted to inspire a change of innovation culture here as well. Get folks thinking differently about innovation and really putting it top of the agenda when it comes to how they do their business.
And I guess we can speak a bit more about your role, but really linking together a number of different institutions, I guess you could say, from government, industry, and even academia.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the power of the model, is that we have this three-way relationship with government, industry, and academia. So we're able to leverage those relationships. So, for example, because we're backed by government and we have funds to invest in technology projects, we can bring in academic partners if that's required. We can bring in industry partners. In every single one of our projects, we have to have an industry partner so that we can ensure that there's, at least a route to market for the technologies that we're working on. We have to be able to define that. So it's a very strong model, and it's meant that we've been able to invest in quite a substantial amount of technology projects. We have over 200 projects in flight at various stages.
Wow.
And over the last 3 or so years, we've invested just over £50 million in various technology projects, over those 200. So it's been hugely busy, phenomenally successful, and we're making a big impact on the way that the technology and the industry actually adopts technology. So I think from a field trial point of view, we're very proud of the fact that we've managed to get so many field trials up off the ground. Because you used to hear people in industry say that, no one wants to be first to try anything new. You want to wait until it's been done 10 or so times before you try something new. Well, we can de-risk that process, and with the right partners and the right developers working on interesting technology, we can help facilitate those field trials, make them happen.
Very good. No, I think that's quite loud and clear. So your role specifically at OGTC, Stephen, could you just explain what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I look after the marketing, the comms, the events team, a small but perfectly formed unit, and our role is to communicate. So part of what we have to do at the OGTC is disseminate lots of information.
Yeah.
Because we're government funded, we have to be transparent and let everyone know what we're doing in terms of the projects. Yeah. So it's important that we talk about case studies, we talk about interesting new technologies that are coming onto the market. We bring the industry together in workshop scenarios, and we develop new ideas with them. We communicate with government. We communicate with all sorts of other stakeholders. It's a really fast-paced, fast-moving environment that we're in. So our role as a team is to maximise that communication effort and make sure that everyone is briefed, fully briefed as to the best of our ability about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and the impact of what we're doing. How is it making a difference? We're kind of a mission-led organisation, so it's really important that everyone who works within the OGTC has a real enthusiasm and a drive towards achieving the mission that we've been asked to go after. And as a result of that, we produce a tremendous amount of content. So I look after that team, but I also have lots of interaction with, with industry, government, and academia as well. So that, again, going back to those three partners, those three core stakeholder groups, I deal with them quite a bit.
Very good. Now, the headline is Oil and Gas Technology Centre, but I'm guessing from the outside looking in that you, particularly in your role, are pushing out, looking into other industries, looking into other sectors.
Yeah, definitely, all the time. I mean, even when we first started, we realised that there may well be sectors who are doing things that we are not doing as a sector that we can learn from. And what we would have to do is bring those examples into the body of the Kirk, so to speak, so we could examine it and see if we could apply it in our sector. That aside, the world has changed in the last 3 years. So obviously, there's two things that happened in the last 18 months that made a big impact on our thinking strategically within OGTC. The first one I would say was the issuing of the IPCC report on climate change. The second one was the issuing of the Committee on Climate Change report for advising the UK government.
Yep.
Very powerful documents. Both of those documents made us realise that as an industry, we're going to have to tackle the whole issue of our emissions. We're going to have to have a real mission to drive home towards net zero. And when government came out with its targets, its legally binding targets to achieve net zero by 2045 in Scotland and 2050 in the UK, we feel that we have to make we have to actually address that as the OGTC. So we set up the Net Zero Solution Centre last September during Offshore Europe. We launched it then, and we've been working with industry partners since that launch to develop the programme of work and the technologies that we aim to develop and deliver in the next wee while.
And how is that going? Because that for those of us that have been around the oil and gas industry for a long time, that whole concept, if you're not in the middle of it, that whole concept seems massive. How do you get to net zero by a certain date in the oil and gas industry? How's it going?
Yeah, I mean, it is a big mission, and you have to take. I love my colleagues who in the various teams that we have within OGTC. They're all engineers and technologists, so they break it down into little components, and they timeline it and they put it on a project plan, and it's it's all very neatly defined. So what you have to do is define the problem first of all. What can we do? What are we trying to solve? And in the course of setting up the Net Zero Solution Centre, we spent an enormous amount of time working with stakeholders to define the problem. And those stakeholders included both government, academia, but also the operators and service companies who are operating offshore assets. We wanted to understand what can we do to actually reduce our emissions, and really focus our time and energy and cash on the projects that will make a difference there. The other thing that we wanted to understand is it's not just about business as usual and reducing emissions in the normal operating plane, if you want to call it that. It's also, our industry is about to change dramatically. We're in the 21st century. The energy business as we know it is morphing into something else. It's not 20th century oil and gas. Going forward, it will be an integrated energy industry offshore. The North Sea is a massive economic generator of wealth. It's a huge potential still there to be gathered from it. And what we can see is that oil and gas, and the CCC say the same thing, will still be crucial to this country, crucial to energy production and consumption until even beyond 2050. There's a real need for the product, but it's a transitional phase, and we have to make sure that we're integrating with renewable energies offshore, that we're making new products like alternative fuels and hydrogen, and we're using the reserves that we have for carbon capture and storage. We're finding new ways of using CO2 to make products. So there's all sorts of really dynamic, fascinating, interesting projects for us to get stuck into.
Fantastic. For many of us, we went into our Hogmanay celebrations at the end of 19, full of anticipation and some sort of, I don't want to say electricity, but certainly some liveliness around perhaps the upstream oil and gas industry that's been, picking itself up off the canvas recently and getting a little bit stronger. We felt reasonably positive that Q1, Q2 results for 2020 were looking pretty good. There was a sort of an energy coming back into what we're doing. We're hearing about more acquisitions and more deals and more requirements for new staff and new engineers and things like that. And then all of a sudden, who knew? February, March, global pandemic. Yeah. We're back on the floor again. It's been a bit of a shock to us all. We didn't see it coming. How are you sensing that in the daily communications that you're having, this shock to the industry?
Well, it's exactly that. It is a fundamental shock to not just our industry, but to the whole economy, to the whole of our society. So we're all having, as a community, to lock down and to do our bit to try and manage the situation. The oil and gas industry is no different. The energy industry is no different. The only real important thing for people to keep in the back of their minds, though, is that we are essential services. We're a key worker country here. We're talking about producing the energy that keeps the economy going and allows us to do this kind of thing and to consume services and have products. So it's really important that we do that. We keep the lights on, so to speak. The industry's reacted very well. I think it's been tested to the extreme, though. Let's be clear about that. But the operators all have plans to deal with this kind of situation. Pandemic planning is part of what they have to do. So they've dusted those plans off and they've applied them very quickly. I think they've actually stepped up and shown a tremendous amount of leadership. Now, there will be errors, there will be moments in time in communication that comes across badly, for example, in terms of how you're talking about cutting costs and all the rest of it when we're all under such stress. Yep. But by and large, I think what we're seeing is a lot of responsible leadership in the sector. So yes, massive shock, planned for in the sense that the paper plans were in place, but you just couldn't think, it's not your consciousness that this is going to happen. It's the proverbial black swan, and these things take you by surprise and take the wind out of your sails. So everyone's reeling from that, but I guess the planning and the preparation and the leadership's kicking in, and we're seeing quite a lot of good leadership, I think.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I think you're absolutely right. The operators absolutely needed pandemic and sort of global pandemia plans. Perhaps the smaller service companies out there maybe didn't have this in their planning and are having to create that leadership focus on the hoof.
Yeah, totally.
And there is no playbook.
There's no playbook, and you have to feel for them because service companies and small technology businesses, by and large, have very thin margins, and operate from quarter to quarter, month to month, even week to week in some cases. So cash is king to them, and when you have a shock like this, it reverberates deeply in the sector. But we're a sector that has some experience of navigating through oil price collapses, and we know how to cut costs, and we know how to trim sales. But this is a different order of magnitude of issue that we have here. We've got a double whammy with a pandemic and also an oil price collapse with OPEC and having a spat with Russia and oversupply issues and all the rest of it. So it's a very complex and challenging situation for the supply chain for sure.
Indeed. I guess in these confusing times with no clear vision of whether this is going to be a V-shaped return or a U-shaped return to the ways of old and what we knew, I guess one thing that employers, whether they're service companies, operators, whether they're in tech, oil and gas or whatever, they can focus on their people, right? I read in it, there's a lot of sound bites going around that some of them are you can just sort of cast away to one side. Some of them really grab you. And one thing that grabbed me was a quote from Mark Cuban, the American billionaire, who said the way that companies treat their employees today could very well define their brand for decades to come moving forward, both in a positive and negative field. What's your views on that?
Absolutely agree with that, actually. I think how we deal with our people and the reputation that we want to have coming out of this is really important. So it's a bit like the question in the Second World War. What did you do in the war, Daddy? You know that. How did you behave? Is another way of translating that. And I think to have a good, sustainable business coming out of this, we're going to have to do our very best by a number of our stakeholders. First of all, our staff, our people. Second of all, our customers. Two very, very hugely important constituents that we have to deal with. How we deal with them, how we treat these two groups is going to set up businesses as they come out of this. It's basically going to define whether or not they're going to come out with a chance of regaining the ground and surviving. If we deal badly with our people right now, it's a major reputational problem for many companies.
Big time. If you could stand up with a megaphone and appeal to all of the small, medium, large enterprises in the sectors that you are connected to, would you have any advice right now, or any sort of keys or ideas right now on how to just focus and stay on it?
I'm not a big one for giving advice, because someone once told me that advice is very rarely welcomed, and I kind of agree with that. But if I had to kind of point out anything, I would probably say, given the fact that it is a tremendously stressful time for everyone in the sector, and all of our staff, all the staff, all our employees, and all our customers, everyone is hugely worried. Take as much time as you need to reflect on your actions before pressing ahead. Before you press the green light on any of your decisions, step back again, take one more opportunity to reflect on it, because the ramifications of what we do now in terms of leadership and how we show up are huge. Personally, I'm very positive and optimistic about the nature of the leadership cadre that we've got in our sector in particular. I think we've got some tremendous leaders, and I know they'll do their very best to do the right thing as much as they possibly can for their people and for their businesses. There will always be exceptions to that, I know, but by and large, the only thing I would say is reflect. Just before you're about to do something, make sure you've covered all the bases. Make sure you've thought it through properly. No one's ever been penalised for thinking deeply about a problem before taking some action.
And I guess what they could do, if they've had that moment of reflection and realise that they maybe need to get more of an industry view on it, they can contact people like you.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, our industry's blessed with lots of different organisations that are providing support. So we've got a government that is very supportive of our sector. with a view that we have to transition over time to achieve net zero, obviously. We have the Oil and Gas UK, which is obviously the voice of the offshore operating community, and they're providing a tremendous amount of advice and support to their membership. Our role is, I guess, a little bit more limited because we're a technology organisation. So our mission is to work on technologies that are going to make a difference and help achieve net zero going forward. But we can give support and advice in terms of, I guess, making sure the smaller supply chain companies, the tech companies, have in their planning and their thinking the right types of technology plans. What are we going to do that's going to be relevant in 10 years' time?
Yeah,
is the question I would be posing. Think bigger than the current crisis is immediate and it's awful, but try and think bigger in a longer time scale than the current crisis. So I heard a phrase the other day that I thought was quite interesting. You've probably heard it because you read a lot of stuff. Someone mentioned to me the concept of cathedral thinking.
Okay.
You come across that before, yeah?
I haven't, no.
All right, okay. Well, apparently, as this is how he explained it to me. So basically, when you start in the Middle Ages, when you started a cathedral, the bishop who decided, well, we're going to build a cathedral, would not be alive to see the end of that project.
Right.
These are huge, multi-generational projects, and when you're tackling something with a cathedral thinking perspective, what you're trying to do is zoom up the way to look at the time frame of your business and where you're going to be in 10 years' time, and really start thinking about, okay, if I know I need to be there, if I know I need to be developing this kind of technology, let's work our way back to make sure that we're doing the right things and developing the right components to make sure we can achieve that. Having that longer view is really important, especially in a situation where we're all focused on the immediate right now. Quite rightly focused on the immediate, but you need to balance it.
Stephen, thank you so much for your time. I guess all of us that have experience in this industry, oil and gas, want to see the OGTC and every other element of our sector back running at full health. Thank you so much for your time, and good luck.
Good luck as well. Really enjoyable conversation. Thanks very much for asking me.
No problem. Thank you.